Affirmations for the Consciousness by Derrick Lee.
Creationally, naturally, I am equipped with the multi-layered striving for evolution and all that which is higher, with a striving which contains all possible developable areas of all achievable capabilities. I seriously and consciously make an effort to develop my power and my achievable capabilities. At my disposal are my learnt capabilities which are developed in their powers, and for which I call my own even when I am not conscious of their entire power because, as a rule, I always know and use only a small part of them. The greater my conscious utilization of my power and capabilities are, the more knowledgeable I become about my real inner powers and true personality. Now that I have developed the powers and capabilities and their essential concept has established itself in my pattern of thoughts, I am master of the situation and I am able to creatively and constructively study all occurring matters of every kind.
Explanation. Excerpt from page 258. Billy Edward Albert Meyer, Termolman. Once the powers and capabilities have flourished to the relative highest level, then nothing is able to bring about a breakdown anymore, regardless of how critical, confused, and difficult the situation may be. However, the prerequisite is always that the powers and capabilities are maintained and are not neglected again and disregarded as a result of some circumstance or other, whereby a reduction of their power, or even the destruction, can be the result. However, this applies less and less the more the human being entirely and completely consciously dedicates himself or herself to his or her powers and capabilities, and tends, nourishes them as well as uses them, and thereby brings to fruition the setting of a teal for the life and so forth. And the more intensively the human being knows about his or her powers and capabilities in his or her inner self, and is conscious that he or she in fact has them at his or her disposal, and can use and realize them at any time at will, by means at his or her disposal, and can use and realize them at any time at will, by means of the power of his or her thoughts, the more he or she copes with every situation which approaches him or her, and with all circumstances of the life, and so forth.
I am always clear and conscious, and I know that I become, or am that which the image of my consciousness produces, because everything is brought to fruition by means of the might of the resulting thoughts. From now on, new healthy and positive and progressive thoughts shall and will take possession of me and create their might. My old unhealthy and negative thought patterns are only thereby able to dissolve in order to then ultimately disappear and lose their control. No pattern of thought and no ideas are allowed to control the intelligence. Rather, I, a human being, hold my thoughts and intelligence under control with my consciousness, because rational ideas and setting of a zila can only be created and realized that way, and indeed by means of the might of my thoughts, which is steered by my consciousness. If confronted with difficulties, I counter them in full knowledge that I alone am responsible for overcoming them. How I see things and the attitude that I take on, as the way I am inclined to think, determines whether my inner nature lives in darkness and obscureness or in light and radiation. I never lose heart, and I always take responsibility for myself.
If an idea arises in my consciousness, then this contains both negative as well as positive factors which I most thoroughly consider in order to create from it an ideal, an imagination, a wish, an intention, an endeavor, and therefore a zeal.
Both the positive as well as the negative I maintain because only thereby can equalized values and successes be created.
Explanation. To think solely in one form or the other creates a wrong understanding of the facts and consequently creates wrong, irrational thoughts, which in turn create irrational feelings and also influence the psyche in this form.
Both the positive as well as the negative I maintain because only thereby can equalized values and successes be created.
Explanation. To think solely in one form or the other creates a wrong understanding of the facts and consequently creates wrong. Irrational thoughts, which in turn create irrational feelings, and also influence the psyche in this form.
I, as a human being, am in fact able to develop the might of my thoughts and guide them in order to use them absolutely consciously in the desired kind and wise according to my own imaginations, intentions, wishes, ideals, and efforts. I am truly able to develop and bring forth might in order to, in every good, healthy, positive, and fair form, create everything with it which I need for life and my conscience evolution, and in order to in fact also cope with life consciously and righteously. I am an optimist, and I nurture my consciousness in deep respect for life in order to also be evolutive in conscious thought patterns. I confront all life's crises and challenges creatively and constructively in order to not only always make the best of them, rather to make the very best of them in order to maintain myself progressively in every respect of my life, and to let the might of my thoughts become even mightier and more effective in regard to my evolution in every conceivable regard. Optimism is a state of the consciousness which is not simply given to me at birth, but I achieve this through great effort and through the forming of my personality and life philosophy. I constantly see and recognize the effective facts in order to avoid wrong impressions and wrong attitudes as well as wrong views which very quickly lead to pessimism. My inner power I constantly train and develop as is done with my physical muscles. It is only when my inner powers are trained that I am able to thereby bring things, wishes, intentions, ideals, and imaginations to fruition as a result of which I can develop and be creatively and constructively as well as progressively active in my inner self or in my external material realms. Through self-knowledge, I recognize my own possibility for the development of strength. My strength is anchored in my consciousness as a positive concept so that it is always present as effective. Knowledge and positively influences my thoughts in this form whereby the positive might of the thoughts develops. All of my efforts I practice until they are mastered. My efforts I continue to maintain and practice, tend and nurture, because only thereby can all really realizable things allow themselves to be translated into action and be brought to fruition, and only thereby can my optimism be preserved. My outlook and consciousness together with its thoughts, I always direct in a forward direction and towards that which is higher, whereby also all the possibilities for progress I see, recognize, and strive for. I always comprehensively know that solely by means of my own power and help, I can confront all difficulties of the life full of courage and readiness for success, and I can overcome everything slowly by means of the might of my thoughts as they correspond to a right and evolutive and positive pattern of thoughts. I understand that anxiety is nothing more and nothing less than a product of uncertainty about something unknown. Something unknown is not worth being anxious about. Rather, I get to the bottom of it whereby the truth concerning the unknown is uncovered and recognized.
Explanation. Excerpt from page 288, MMUTT. Once the truth pertaining to the unknown has come to light, then it can also be understood and evaluated, whereby cognition gains ground and reveals that there is no need for anxiety when a fact is recognized in all its values.
I always search for the innermost peace which exists deep in my innermost creational nature. I integrate my peace into my inner nature which I have acquired myself and which I fundamentally form in accordance with my innermost creational nature. I live and practice within the laws of my consciousness, which are the patient practice of self-cognition, self-realization and self-liberation, which frees me from negative wrong ideas and habits which I consciously comprehend as a result of self-cognition. My consciously comprehended positive right factors I emphasize and form into values which I am able to realize by means of the might of my thoughts. As my inner nature is formed according to creational natural laws, then this happens in accord with the form of the creational model, indeed according to the innermost nature which is creational. The forming of my inner and outer nature is in every regard my own duty and obligation, and indeed emerging from the creationally conditioned striving for that which is higher. I recognize and follow the striving impulse of my individual creationally conditioned innermost nature. I am innately responsible for the forming of my inner and outer nature, and also my character, morality, and entire personality, as well as my life. Aside from myself, there is no divinity who rules over me or who is responsible for my very existence. I live solely and in every respect as a result of my own efforts.
Explanation. Excerpt from page 296. MOTT. Naturally, the creational natural energy is there by necessary in order to enliven the material body, so therefore the creational spirit form is necessary, which, however, has no relevance to a creator God. Rather, it is an energy of the impersonal and genderless universal consciousness.
To lose anxiety regarding other human beings' concerns, I always exercise a neutral, positive, equalized, and realistic attitude in regard to my fellow human beings in order to see and recognize them as they actually are, whereby the unknown is broken up and demystified, which makes my anxiety disappear.
Explanation. Excerpt from page 296. MODT. Unfortunately, it is a sad fact that uncountable human beings have anxiety regarding others. Human beings with anxiety regarding their neighbor or fellow human beings are especially those who suffer from shyness, indecisions, inferiority complexes, and so forth, or who are simply uneducated, unknowing, or are in some form backward or disadvantaged. Such suffering or disadvantages naturally lead to thoughts and feelings which are of equate negative nature and consequently, in this form, also influence the psyche and consciousness such that factors arise from that which are confusing and have become inexplicable, which embody something unknown, which gives cause for anxiety. Note, fear is based on known factors. The human being is not anxious about which he knows. Anxiety is based on unknown factors. Only factors of the unknown trigger anxiety because the human being does not know how to defend against it.
I never endeavor to impress myself or others by means of my belief or by means of my intellectual learnness. Rather, I do it by means of the effective truth of the spiritual knowledge. The impression and the thoughts which I form in regard to myself are the key to the failure or success of my most secret or most public plans and wishes, because they are realized by the means of the might of my thoughts. I create a mental picture of the side of myself which is most worthy of love, and I also recognize the disagreeable, the negative and negating forms, because that which is good and positive can be built up into something even higher, while that which is bad and negative gives cause for the efforts towards improvement and for change to that which is progressive. 312. As my material consciousness creates and establishes the mental image, it manifests as a result of the might of my thoughts. My psyche is colored according to my thoughts. It is my obligation to direct and progressively form according to the creational innermost nature my inner nature, which I form myself. Being selfless does not mean to disadvantage myself or endanger my life. Rather, it solely means to be unselfish and not be concerned about my own advantage. Rather, to altruistically live magnanimously, and from this, to responsibly fulfill my obligation of the pure humanness. I achieve selflessness through knowledge and wisdom in fulfillment of the therewith connected creational natural laws. I am knowing and wise in the creational natural sense, and I concern myself with the evolution and conduct my life according to the neutral-positive-equalized laws of life, and only from that arrives all those values which actually make me into a real human being who lives in cognition and fulfillment. True cognition and the greatest fulfillment are thereby my genuine happiness of the love, of the joy and freedom, as well as of the harmony, of the true friendship, of the love for my neighbor, and of the universal love. which concerns each existence and every individual life which crawls and flies in the expanse of the universe. I achieve prosperity and abundance inwardly and outwardly, in good, healthy, positive, and fair form, because I set aside any efforts which are built upon unrighteousness and unvirtues, in order to turn towards bringing my inner nature to fruition in accord with the model of my innermost nature, creational nature. I place neutral-positive-equalized thoughts, which are occupied with imagining successful results which develop from corresponding ideals and are converted into reality by means of the might of my thoughts in the position of old virtues and unrighteous, wrong, unhealthy, ungood, and negative thoughts. My new thoughts and their might create a considerable amount of new, dynamic energy which is released, from which new ideas arise, which transformed again into ideals and imaginations lead to new achievements. And everything which appeared to be failures I now recognize as progress. My progress is based in always thinking and acting evolutely in a creative, constructive wise. Being evolutive, creative, constructive also means that I factor in errors to be processed and resolved. Prosperity and abundance are not simply pure joy and sunshine. Rather, they are also furnished with things of darkness which I progressively recognize and penetrate, in order to find my way to the light again. It is only by prosperity and abundance also containing errors both materially and immaterially that I am called upon to continue to make an effort towards that which is better and higher and, therefore, that which is progressive. Whoever rusts. 346 Enthusiasm is a potential which works for me when I maintain it in healthy, right and positive limits, and indeed, when I maintain it with thoughts which have the same direction, which also create a realizing might. I have a spiritual self available to me in the form of the innermost creational nature, as well as a personality-created self in the form of the inner nature. My spirit form gives life to my material consciousness and subconsciousness, as well as to my entire body.
Explanation. From page 348. The creational impulses of striving for that which is higher must be searched for and recognized in this creational nature, and be specifically separated according to their particular values, in order to then carry these over into the material realm of the consciousness, and to evolutely process them, in order to newly form the inner personality-related nature from them, and to awaken it to a new and evolutive life.
My true enthusiasm is imprinted into my consciousness with vigor, vibrancy, idealism, joy, enthusiasm for work, cheerfulness, and elevatedness. With true enthusiastic thoughts, my consciousness has very great significance for a successful life because my real, honest, and positive, healthy enthusiasm enables me to be successful in achieving a real zeal. My achievement of a genuine enthusiasm in the evolutive sense means a complete re-education of myself and the achievement of a fundamentally new capacity for understanding. All thought patterns I thoroughly examine and transform, thereby my capacity for evolutive enthusiasm is achieved. Evolutive enthusiasm is actually an ability to be acquired. Evolutive enthusiasm comes from the impulses of the innermost creational nature of the spirit, once the ability is acquired. I create my evolutive enthusiasm because it is not simply given to me or laid in my lap by creation as all other qualities that I have acquired. It is my sole obligation to do and to undertake everything in order to fulfill the striving and to realize the innermost nature's impulses which are specifically directed at very many things which I am able to develop. I am only truly alive in myself because I created the capacity for true evolutive enthusiasm in myself. Enthusiasm helps me to overcome very many obstacles and difficulties which would otherwise bar the way to which is progressive. As a result of my evolutive enthusiasm, my vitality also climbs, and there is a strengthening of my capacity to endure when things are very hard and situations arise which would require tough endurance.